judging our mistakes or the way that we think we should have ridden, or we're not good enough, or we're the shitty rider, it's still the first thing that comes up in our mind.
Happy Monday. So happy to have you here. How are you doing today, Lorna?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I've had a bit of a challenging Monday morning. I told Lorna about it. I'm not going to go into all details. Let's just say there was a dog who had diarrhea, and I'm going to stop there. But Jesus Christ. You just come down and yeah. Just not the best way to start your Monday, but hey ho, dog has been to the vets, the living room has been cleaned up, and the sun is shining. So you do what you have to do, and then you put a smile on your face. Yeah.
Your day is improving.
It's improving. That's
a positive. That's a win. Win of the day. It's improving.
Yeah. No, but I do think sometimes people think like, oh yeah, Lorna's and Justin's life, they're almost just amazing, and they don't have any everyday experiences like I have in my life. They're all just happy Monday. But here's the thing: I think we turn it into happy Mondays. No matter how our Mondays start, we turn them into happy Mondays.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we have the same shit and rigmarole that happens in our lives that everybody else does too. I love what you said. They return it into Happy Monday. That's good.
Yeah. Righto. Let's move away from talking about dog, because this is actually a mindset and performance podcast for Equestrian. So, right. What we're going to talk about today is, that moment when in your riding, you think you've figured something out, like you've had a challenge, you think you figured it out, and you finally feel like, yeah, I got it, like I'm past it. And then when you least expect it, that challenge that you had like 6 months ago, it just pops back up, rears its ugly head again, and then you're ready to freaking, tear your hair out. Do you know what I'm talking about there, Lorna?
Yeah, 100%. And I think every single person, nearly every single person that we work with goes through this as well. I think, especially when your confidence is resting or relying on the fact that you've got the solution. Like, you know how to ride the freaking horse, you've figured it out, you've worked it, jackpot. Like, we're going to go into this round and I am uber confident, I am going to pull this out the back.
You got it.
Actually, the real challenge, actually, or the real growth happens when that plan stops working. And it does. Maybe you'd be better off explaining what actually happened.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, exactly. Like you say, the real growth happens when that magic key or that thing that you thought were working, when it stops working. But it is so frustrating. Yeah. So to explain what happened, I have this show jumping horse, Queenie. Everyone knows her. She's incredible. And I've been jumping quite a lot inside with her this winter, and it's been really going well, right? We've had a really long streak of like having, every now and again there's something small, hiccups, but all in all, in general, it's been going quite well. And more than anything, I've really been able to have her under control, because that used to be a challenge. And here we go. It used to be a challenge for me, especially when I was competing outside, that sometimes she could really just be too hot and too strong. She's a very big horse, and she loves her jumping, which is a luxury problem, but she could really take off with me in lines, and kind of, it felt like we were kind of risking our lives, kind of taking off in lines, and just taking one or two strides out of lines. And this whole winter, I really haven't had that challenge. Like, I just thought, like, I figured this out. I know how to ride this big horse by now. I've improved. And last week I was competing in a 3-day show. First day was really just good. Yeah, amazing. Second day, the horse was, again, very enthusiastic. And it started already in the warm-up, and she kind of rushed at fences. And I did my usual thing, like, I had trainers tell them to just, after the fence, pull her to a halt, like make her listen. So I did that, but it just got worse and worse. And the horse just started hanging, like literally hanging in my hands. And I did what I usually don't do, actually, because I ride her with double reins. So I have like one single rein, but it's not so strong, let's say. And then I have a second rein, which gives me a little bit more power and steering. So I started using my second rein already in the paddock, like in the warm-up, which I usually don't. But I had that feeling like I really can't hold her. So I started using that second rein even. And then I went in when I was like, oh my God, like, I already felt like, Jesus Christ, what is this going to be? And I, kind of start the course. And I think about midway the course, like I had no steering, Lorna, like no steering, no brake at all whatsoever. But me being B, I'm just like continuing hoping for the best kind of thing. Made it to the end of the course. Somehow miraculously, we were jumping clear in this 130. We were even ending up being placed. I have no idea because honestly, I swear to God, I was like, oh my God, this is just like, this is dangerous. Like, this is freaking dangerous. Okay, so what happens after this? I go back to stable and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, sorry for swearing. I shouldn't have done that. But like, and you're just like, I thought we were so past this. Like, I haven't had this in like, 8 months. And all of a sudden it was back and it was worse than ever. And I really had no brake and I had no steering again. And then you're just like, it's just a thing of like, Jesus Christ. And then, the first thing that happens is that you said it really well on actually last week's podcast when you go like, you go down that shitty rider route. You're like, yeah, I'm simply not good enough to ride this horse. Like, that's it. Like, okay, this is proof. Like, I was lucky for a while, but I'm simply not good enough to ride this horse. And that's it, and then it goes from bad to worse. I know better now. I can stop myself when that happens. I can recognize when that happens. And I, obviously reframed it as being, okay, there's just something here to figure out. And, every challenge helps you grow, all those kind of things. But that is, what can I say? That is a tough moment when you're sat there. Do you can you relate to that, Lorna? Do you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's interesting when we have those expectations and they're not, you've done a lot of work on yourself, as have I, and we don't consciously set those expectations. But the more you do this, the more consistent you get. Like you say, you've been doing awesomely well with our jumping consistent rides, your distances are working out, all that kind of stuff. So there is that expectation that this is going to continue, and it's not really when you think it's a living creature, it's a horse that's going to react differently every single day. We are living beings. We react to situations differently every single day. We're not machines. And I think it's interesting because you have done so much work on yourself that even in those moments, and I hold my hands up because I am exactly the same, judging our mistakes or the way that we think we should have ridden or we're not good enough or we're the shitty rider, it's still the first thing that comes up in our mind, rather than just, and I don't know what it takes to do that because hand on heart, I'm not there. Like, I don't know what it takes to instantly come out and be like, okay, well, that didn't work out. Here we go again. Like, I don't know what that takes because I am the same as you. Like, there'll always be those moments. Like, I jumped yesterday and I had more control without putting this on me and not you, but I had more control. Like, but I was comparing it to a feeling before. And I said to you, I was like, oh, I think my impulsion could have went up a notch. And I actually sent it to my trainer and she was like, yeah, awesome. When you've got that quality canter, so you just need to trust on those last strides and, not feel like you have to drive in them, but so much straighter, your corners were so much better and all the rest of it. And remember in the podcast a while ago, I'd gone jumping and I thought I'd done really well. And there was one comment about, I don't know, your turbo elbows or something. And then that got stuck in my head. So it's the same experience as you have. Like, you get something in your head and you're like, oh, that's it. But it didn't work out because it's not the feeling that I had before. So that was a big old ramble, but absolutely. And I think for me, I'd love to hear your thoughts on why we go into that judgment, first before we actually can step into a space of curiosity and obviously, learn from what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. And that comes back to our paradigm. Like a paradigm, when I say paradigm, what I mean is our belief system. Like what we believe about ourselves, right? Identity.
Yeah.
Like I've always believed my entire life that I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough rider. I'm not a good enough rider to be riding at top level or to be riding really good horses or, and then especially, at this show, which is incredible, right? I was there with two friends of mine, one of them being my trainer and a friend of his, and they are both like, the guys. They've been riding at like really high level, ranking for tests in show jumping. They're pure show jumpers. I consider myself being more of a, kind of eventer, and being there with them, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I'm obviously the lesser rider from the three of us. And then I think it's even easier to go down that thing of like, you compare yourself and, yeah, but I'm pleased to say, like, again, I didn't stay for a long time in that, the shitty rider, because I recognize it now. Like I'm so aware of when it happens. And then, I know that it's not helpful, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it's just not helping me. It's just not helping me. So, really quickly, I was just thinking to myself, okay, this is happening now, and I'm sure there's a reason for it. And I'm kind of like, if I can figure out what happened, and if I can figure out the reason, then and I can figure out what I could test out differently, then I feel like I can move forward again. So I obviously used the opportunity now. The fact that I was there with those two guys, my trainer being one of them, and another really experienced guy, I spoke to them, and they were so helpful, and they were really really just like. Because the funny thing, I came out and I was like, oh, that was just dangerous. And first of all, they were like, no, I think for the first time you're actually having a decent tempo when you ride like that. That's good. Like it's supposed to be like that. If you want to ride a 140 one day, like that's the kind of spirit you need. I was like, but I need control. And at first we had a little bit of a discussion around this. But then once I kind of opened up my mind to really listening to what they were saying, and they really explained to me that, look, you're fighting with your horse, like you're working against each other. And this is a huge horse. He's super strong, and you think you're gonna somehow with your 60 kilos you're gonna fight her 750 kilos. Like that's just not happening. So you need to change, like you need to do something differently. There's nothing to do with strength. There's nothing to do with us being bigger or guys or whatever. It has to do with technique. So they're like, rather than fighting your horse, what would it look like if you were trying to be as light as you possibly could, and I went in the day after. Well, obviously we sat down, we made a big plan, and I also ended up like just really testing other things, because I knew that this route was not the way to go. Like, like 8 months ago, I was in that place, and this thing with trying to stop the horse and pull her back and get her to stop and get her to respect my hand and all that. Like, it didn't work. Like that's what I tested back then. And it went, from bad to worse. Those kind of yo-yo rounds where you kind of land and you pull the horse almost to a halt to then have to restart your canter again. And then the horse sees a fence and she takes off again. And it just, I've been down that route. Like, I know that doesn't work. So I was like, okay, I'm going to test something new. Went out and I rode the horse really early in the morning, really dressage wise, kind of set her up, get her hind legs like underneath her, get her to, be really light in the hand. And then this guy was like, the friend of my trainer, he was like, why don't you just like get on her and just literally trot canter, jump a couple of jumps. And people that know me, I like to sit on my horse like really far in advance, be really prepared, make sure I have all the time in the world. So it was so against my natural thing, but I was like, okay, clearly what I did yesterday was not working. So, okay, let's just keep an open mind, test something new. And I literally did that. So I rode her probably in the morning, and then just went in, and like all I did was like, I just gave her my hand. Like I didn't bother where her nose was or where her head was, nothing. Like all I cared about, that she was in front of my leg, and she trotted, cantered, and jumped a couple of jumps, which was fine. She was still obviously a little bit hectic. Like she had ran off with me like completely the day before. But went in, and to be fair, I was a bit terrified, if I'm being completely honest, because, I was just focusing on being light in my hand, making that my one intention. But in my experience, the horse is still going way too fast, like running off way too much. But I thought, okay, just test something new, worst that can happen, I pull her up and I go outside kind of thing. And, I had a really cool experience. Like it was way outside of my comfort zone, like way out. Like even if it was quote unquote just a 125, which I've jumped many times with its horse, just the way of riding was so different from what I usually do. Just like being really light and letting the horse canter, and then just like did everything I could to not use my hand. I literally just sat up with my seat, and she didn't come back as much as I wanted to, but she came back a little bit, and but then just trust that and ride with that. And we rode a really cool, like really, really good course. Again, we were pleased. We ended up being fifth, and horse jumped amazing. So, afterwards I could really see that this is something new, and this is something that I need to explore more. And even though the round wasn't perfect, I could see that, that challenge I had the day before, and the fact that this happened, it really forced me to ask for help, open up my mind to new ideas, test new things. And now afterwards I can say that this is probably the way to ride this horse. But I realized that in a matter of one day, just because I really dared to turn my approach completely upside down, trust those guys' opinion, and just go for it, and do something differently. And it was so freaking scary, but it really gave me so much learning back.
And I think these are, the Alfies and the Queenies of this world are big horses. And, these horses are the ones that make us feel better. The Eccles of the world come out and that horse is exactly the same every single day. He's up for stuff, like he wants to go for it. I know he has his challenges too, but you essentially get the same horse. The Eccles and the Queenies and Alfies, some days they're up for it, some days they run, some days they're a bit behind. You're like you never actually quite have the same horse. And I think it's really cool because when I hear you talk, it's almost a little bit like, yeah, this is the way to ride the horse. Like I'm going to ride this horse forward, but I guarantee you at some point, like I've been there and I'm like, okay, we just let him roll and we just go with it. And then before you know it, you're like, shit, now he's not listening to me and he does have to be rebalanced. And I think it's a constant process of evolution. And I think that's a cool thing because it makes us not always in the moment. I can sit here and say, well, it's a cool thing, but there's many times I would sat on him and I've not said that, but it constantly makes us think, yes, you can have a plan. And Emily, my trainer, always says that you have to adapt. You can't just have a plan and think, that's it, I'm going to do that. And I know we talk about awareness points. I'm going to have the awareness on just having soft hands today. But I think the gold bit comes from, okay, mid-round, this ain't working. Like, this is not what I had last time. So actually, how do I adapt my plan in this moment? How can I think quickly enough? And I think you're really brave to go in there and be like, she's a big horse, she's a strong horse, she's a powerful horse, to actually go with it. But I'm guessing if it's anything like my experience and the experiences you've had in the past, you're going to go in and that's going to work a few times. And then she's going to be like, okay, I'm going to throw something different at you today. And I think that is actually, it's frustrating in the moment, isn't it? Because we think we should know how to do it. But I think when these opportunities arise, and I guess we're lucky in that way that we don't always have the same horse to ride every single day.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like every time when we work through one of those, we gain another tool in our toolbox.
Yeah, 100%.
And I
Yeah.
can see so clearly now that actually, even at the moment there in the evening of the second round, I was just like, oh Jesus, I'm just back where I was 8 months ago. Like, but I realized now that I wasn't actually, because 8 months ago I tested something and it didn't work, and I tested something else and then it clearly got better.
Yeah.
Now it's almost like we've graduated to the next level, and now the next level of challenge is coming, and then it doesn't mean that you're back to where you were then, because I know more now. I know what I did back then. It didn't work. And I know now that I need to test something else here. I need to test another approach. And I wouldn't have known that if I wouldn't have had the experience 8 months ago, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And like I relate to that all day long. And that's that good old threat part of our brain again. Or we're back to square one. Like you might have spent another shitload of money. You might have trained for another year, but guess what? You're back to sitting on your arse again, back where you started from. And, actually, I think the feeling I got yesterday is what I tried to create at the end of last season when it kind of fell apart. When it's the same thing, trying to stop him from running, trying to make him wait, but then he started dropping me and the whole thing got messy and he didn't understand and I didn't understand. And it's easy to say, oh, I'm back here again, but actually you're not. Like you have a whole other year of training, you have another year of experience. Like you say, you have more tools in your toolbox. So actually, yes, you might have a new challenge, but actually, if we can use that memory, that training part of our brain, then it's always going to be like, okay, what's the plan? Like, how do we keep moving on from this challenge? How do we fix it? Like you did, you asked for some help from those guys and, they helped you. Whereas if we'd stayed in threat mode, which is, am I safe? No, I'm not, because here you're vulnerable again. And here you are, like however many months down the line and it's not got any better. But that's not true. Like none of that stuff is true. That is a story. And I think throughout all of this work, we always say it, whenever you push your comfort zone, you're gonna feel vulnerable. Like you're open to being vulnerable, and that is the place to be. And I think the more you work on yourself, the less time like you spend in that place of this is about my identity, which essentially is what we go into when I'm a shitty rider, I'm not as good as those guys, yada yada yada. To okay, this is information, this is facts, this is learning. I get to choose what to do with this. And exactly like you did, you were super brave. You took all that learning, you took that information, you were open-minded enough. You're really brave to go in there and be like, okay, I'm just going to try it. Whereas if we'd stayed in the old limiting belief or the identity, then you wouldn't have done that because you'd be like, it's just not going to work out. So what's the point in trying? And I've been there years ago for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think even there, like, for me, okay, and this is different for everyone. We often talk about words on this podcast, how words make you feel, or which meaning that you apply to words. Like for me, vulnerable is like, oh, it doesn't really have connotation to it that I like. Let's say I don't like being vulnerable. Like that But if I can turn it into curiosity, for me, like it's about being vulnerable. For me, it's more like, okay, it's about being curious. It's about like having an opportunity to learn. So rather than like saying like I'm vulnerable, asking those guys for support, or I'm vulnerable going into this round, I'm more like, okay, I'm curious. I'm curious enough to ask those guys for support. I'm curious enough to go into a round and test a new approach just to see what happens, just to see if I can learn something new from it.
Yeah.
What do you
I
think?
think, like you say, it's just words. Like, I know when I'm in my
Yeah.
stretch zone, I'm vulnerable because it's not within my
Yeah.
comfort zone. I can't do everything. Like, my ego is not going to win all the time. So of course you're vulnerable because,
Mm.
my confidence is not at its highest. My self-belief's probably not at its highest. It makes me vulnerable, but that's okay because to me, vulnerable is like going in with that beginner's mindset. Exactly what you're saying, but you've reframed it in a space of
Yeah.
curiosity. So if you go in with that
Hmm.
beginner's mindset of, okay, I'm going to try something new. This is new, then I think it makes us want to step into it more and actually more so just give it a
Yeah.
shot. Just try, give it a go, than
Yeah.
back to that identity of I'm shit and this isn't going to work out and what's the point even trying and I might as well go home and yada yada yada.
Yeah. And I think somewhere like that is also a requirement that we are willing
100%.
to step into that beginner's mindset and the state of curiosity or vulnerability
Mm,
or whatever you want to call it. Because here's the thing, like
yeah,
I've obviously set a dream goal for myself to start a 140 with Queenie this year. And to ride a 140 is not the same as riding a 125 or a 130. Like now I can ride in this canter and I can make that work because this horse has a huge scope and she'll make that, right? But that's what these guys also explained to me, that look, if you want to ride a 140, the canter that you are riding with right now, that's not going to work. Like even like you're talking about that you want to have control and all those kind of things. And, it looks really pretty and it maybe feels good to you right now because that's what you're used to. That's in your comfort zone. But fact is that round where you were cantering around and you felt like you were completely out of control, that was the first time we saw you canter in a canter that you could actually ride into a 140 with. So you are going to need to upgrade your feeling or what you think it's supposed to feel like, right?
yeah,
What you think is good and what it's supposed to be like,
yeah.
it's actually not the right feeling. It's not the feeling that you need if you want to make a step up, if you want to go one level up. So I think that also is so important, to keep that beginners or open mind, or just realize that you're comfortable doing what you've always done. You're comfortable cantering in the canter that you've always done and it's worked out in the past. But
Yeah.
actually, to make a step up, whether that is in dressage, show jumping, cross country, you need to be brave enough to go and search for a different feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think it's about not forcing our horses into our plan, to make them go the way that we want to, like make them go
Yeah.
within our comfort zone. And we need to start adapting our plans to actually work with them. And like you say, just try something different, try something new.
Yeah, I think what you're saying there is also gold. Like that is actually another thing that I also realized this past week. That thing about like, working with your horse or working against your horse.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
so often, and that was a huge learning from this week. Again, like every challenge, it brings you so much learning and so much aha moments.
Yeah.
I of course I think like I'm one team with my horse and all those kind of things, but actually when I look back at that round the second day, I was so working against her, like so working against her. And she was doing all she could, because in her what can I say, perception, I was, pulling her to a smaller canter than was needed. And she was working against, because she's like, no, Jocelyn, no, we need a bigger canter because it's a big track. And I was like, no, we need a smaller canter. And, we were just so like working against it. It's a miracle we got around that round clear. I have no idea how that happened because we were not one team. Like we were so working against each other. And, Peter, my trainer, he said it so nicely. He's like, you want to ride the wave. Like it sounds very like, woo woo. And someone says, like, just ride the wave like, like a surfer. But it makes sense to me. Like now after I had that second like round, but it's like it's a little bit scary, but you kind of just lean into it and you go for it. And now I understand what it was that he meant, because the moment you start working against the wave, it's not going to work. You're going to fall. Right? It's you need to kind of
Yeah.
be with, allow your horse to go. And I think then that's something, again, I still need to grow in that, but I do believe that is the way forward, to learn to trust your horse and work with your horse. And not always grab for that control, because I think the more a control is in a way working against your horse, or working against their natural flow of going. Don't get me wrong, it shouldn't be dangerous, but I think in many cases, I think we can benefit from trusting our horses a little bit more and letting them go a little bit more and trust their instincts and trust their feeling a little bit more, rather than trying to forcefully hold them back and hold them and hold them and hold them. That's at least what I took away from this weekend.
Yeah. And I think that's good for anyone listening. Like, that is specific to you and your horse. It doesn't mean to say that that's gonna work for everyone. If I put that into context with our family, he's always like, you do not let him just hoon around like that. He needs to rebalance. He has to listen. So I think, it's, don't just suddenly think, oh my God, I'm a control freak and I should let my horse go and I'm just going to let it gallop around and do whatever. And actually, I went through that last year, actually, when I did a bit of training with Andy Heffernan, and I came back and I was like, okay, I'm just exactly what you're saying right now. I'm just going to let him canter. I'm going to go with him. I remember him saying to me, pretend you're a little bit drunk. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to be soft in my body and I'm just going to go with him. And Emily was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, no, like, he has to listen to you. And I think sometimes we get ideas and we run with them, exactly what you're saying, but then we need to be responsive enough to be like, okay, I need a bit of this and a bit of this and a bit of this, and we just gather all the information. But I think that's probably our process for the whole of our riding career, for the whole of our lives. Even those guys at the top, look at when Muhammad was on. Like, he found so many gold bits of information as he went in and jumped those tracks, and all those kind of. We're all control freaks by nature, for sure. But I think it's finding. I know you hate the word balance, but finding. It is the balance of what works, and be adaptive to the plan and respond in the moment. And, and I think that is when we become very, I hate the word good also, but we become very good when we're like, okay, you did back off a little bit there. So now get your leg on and ride forward and, like, make your distances happen. And I think it's a constant process of evolution. Like, I think we do go wrong when we're like, we've got it. We've absolutely got it. We've nailed it. Like, I know how to ride this horse. Like, I know what I'm going to do today. And then you come out and you're like, well, that didn't work out, did it?
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And then actually that makes the circle round, right? Then we're back to where we started, 100%. That's, every now and again we get the, oh yeah, I got it. I finally got it. Because it gives us a certain, dopamine, I guess, where we worked for something so hard and then we're finally like, I got it. But, and I think that's fine and that's good. That's a reward for all the work you put in when you finally have those aha moments. But I think it's important to know that it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. That is just the beginning towards the next aha moment. It just builds up and builds up.
And you have to remember also, when you push yourself, so, you talk about amazing rounds, 130s, 135s, 140s, your nerves start to play a part in that also. Like, then you become distracted. Then it's harder to stick to your awareness. Then it's harder to keep riding forward. I think we get it. And then hopefully we push ourselves a bit further and we get into that stretch zone a bit more. And then all different challenges come up. And that is when you really have it, is when you can have those nerves and you can have that fear there and you can have that self-doubt there, but you can also get your plan in there. Because I think for me, it's always going to be connected. We're always going to have those two things if we're pushing ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember that it's actually out of the challenge. Like, I think that the aha moments, they feel amazing. Like, let's be honest, they feel amazing, but those are actually not the growth moments. The growth is happening from the challenges when you sit down and you're forced to become curious and open-minded and go and test new things. And I think it's so important to, in those moments, rather than going down that shitty rider route, like the moment you catch yourself, just turn it into curiosity. Also, just test something new. It's just a universe. Like, I believe in the universe. Just the universe showing you where there's still work to do, and it's up to you to figure out how to move forward from that.
And there's always work to do.
There's always work to do. That is a fact. That is a fact. Yes. Yeah. But that makes it so interesting, doesn't it?
It does. Right. Yeah. It'd be really boring if we could just go out and let's all just bob on every single time. Imagine that, huh?
Yeah. Where would be the challenge in that? Yeah. Righto. This went a little bit all over the place, but this was a very open reflection. And this is kind of how our reflections work. So we kind of wanted to take you also into that a little bit. Yet again, if there's anything in particular that you want us to chat around, the podcast, questions that you want answered, that you want our perspective on, do let us know on Instagram or send us an email. You'll find the link to all of those things in the show notes of this episode. And if you want to dive in a little bit deeper and you haven't yet registered to our weekly hacks list, then I do recommend doing so. You'll find the link to that also in the show notes. That way you can get tips and tricks similar to the ones that we talk about inside of this podcast in an email form. And actually, like looking at today's episode, I think those email forms are really helpful because those podcasts, they tend to go all over the place. And what we do afterwards is we look at the podcast and we, with a little bit from our friend AI, we turn it into something very structured and very nice that we can then put out as an email to you. So do make sure you get on that email list. It's minnick.eu/weeklyhacks. And other than that, we're going to challenge you to start making strides in your mindset so you can truly make strides in your riding. And we will see you on the next Magical Monday, which is hopefully not filled up dogs and diarrhea, Lorna.